Hello, my lovelies, and welcome to the Moving Toward Better podcast. I'm your host, Karen Bemis from movingtowardbetter.com and KE Bemis Consulting, and I'm here to help you live your best life, powered by your unique and amazing personality. Hello, my lovelies. Today, we're talking about feeling like a failure and what to do about that. Honestly, that's pretty much what this podcast and my website are all about. Helping you get past those feelings of failure to live your best life and create a kick-butt business that works with your amazing personality. To make sure you get every episode, click the subscribe button and we'll get right to it. So here's the thing. We all feel like a failure now and then. It's what we do with that feeling that determines whether we move past it or continue to deal with it in the form of imposter syndrome, even when we do succeed. It may sound like an impossible thing for some personality types, but I assure you that whatever your personality, you can overcome feelings of failure to create your best business, your best partnerships, and your most amazing family relationships. For those that are new to the podcast, I use the DISC personality system to talk about these subjects, which includes the driven, the inspired, the supportive, and the cautious personalities, also known as D, I, S, and C. Through that, I help women entrepreneurs create a life and business that thrills them based on their amazing personality. So let's get started. As always, we start with the D or driven personality. The D personality naturally charges forward. They thrive when they have choices and control of those choices and control of their environment. Some would say that they're born leaders, but unless they understand themselves, they can charge in several different directions and never get where they want to go. They feel like a failure when they charge forward and don't see the results that they want really quickly. In some cases, that empowers them to make needed changes and create a better life and business. Sometimes it creates turmoil and muddies the waters because the driven personality is not known for patience. And they will pivot or change things before they actually give themselves and their actions time to bear fruit. The best thing a D business person can do is find someone detail-oriented that's a little slower paced, that they trust to help them think through things because the D personality doesn't love details, at least for the most part. They're always ready to change. They're always ready to charge forward, but sometimes it takes a bit of patience to get where they want to go. This is important for the D personality to understand. Slowing down does not mean failure. Sometimes it's actually the smartest thing a D person can do. And though it is very difficult for them, it's often their fastest path to success. I know that sounds counterintuitive. And if you're a D personality, you're probably thinking, ugh, or more likely you've got some nasty word that you've said, some swear word you've said in your brain. But, hear me out on this. Because I want you to think of your business or even your relationships in terms of a baby. When a baby is learning to crawl, you don't stand them up on their feet and push them so that they run because they're going to fall over and smash their face. And that's the worst thing you can do because then you add fear and sometimes anger to the mix, especially if you're a D. And driven people detest feeling fearful. They're mostly okay with anger, but still, it's not always a healthy thing, right? So for them, it's unproductive because it can spiral into a full-blown conniption fit. And if that does happen, it's important to remember that a D person processes their feelings through action. So if a D has these feelings of failure, they need to do something about it. Action is their way to heal and move forward. To process those feelings of failure, here's a few questions to ask yourself if you're a D personality. You may not like them, but they're important. How did I contribute to this failure? Is this failure more my fault or someone else's? And be very honest about that. It's really easy to blame somebody else, but it's very important to look at the balance of whose fault a failure might actually be. If it's someone else's fault or no one's fault, what's the best way to fix it? Should you fix it? Should you let it go? Or should you give it to someone else to handle? I know that's a hard thing when you want to be in control, but sometimes other people do things better than you do. You don't like to admit that, but you know it's true. One of the things, if a D gets out of balance, that they might do is try to work harder rather than work smarter. I'll just work harder. I'll just work harder. And that's not saying that that's not smart sometimes. It's just the inclination that they want to move forward rather than stepping back and taking a moment to think things through. That's why a trusted, reserved, and detail-oriented partner or coworker can be invaluable to that driven person and can get them to the success they crave even faster. When it comes to your relationships, all of these points come into play too, because you love being in charge. But when others don't agree with your agenda, you struggle because you sometimes forget that others have their own agenda as well. Them disagreeing with you takes courage because you are so strong in your convictions. So if they do screw up the courage to do that, take note. For most of the other personality types, it takes an enormous amount of energy and courage to speak up to you. And if you honor that and recognize it, you'll get to a successful conclusion so much faster. Won't be easy, especially if you have to slow down and listen, but the results will be worth the effort. Remember that the I and the S personalities are people-oriented, so they can tune into things you might miss. And the C personality picks up details you might miss. And when you team up with those personalities, you almost always end up in a better place than you ever could doing it all on your own. So now we're going to move on to the I personality. And the I personality is the one that probably gets over failure the quickest because they just don't like feeling bad. You know, you can, if you're an I personality, you can pivot quickly too, but without a plan, you flounder again and again, and you never quite find your stride, which means your journey is an emotional roller coaster. You too can benefit from someone who can help you create a more detailed plan of how to build your business and to help you think things through because you naturally gloss over a lot of those details. You work best as a team member, but make sure that that team is comprised of people that complement your skill set. You love people, but sometimes you let your heart rule your head. And in your business, you need to make sure that you have people that excel in areas that you struggle with. Creating processes can be a challenge for you, but when you understand someone else's process and they make sense to you, you can run with them, and you often make them a lot more fun than people ever thought they could be. The other thing that a team helps you with is corralling the enormous amount of creative energy that you have. You're that person who constantly has new ideas. You're shooting them off, ping, 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 but you often lack the follow through to bring those ideas to fruition. Or you try to bring them all to life without following through and make a just big mess of things. And I know that because I do have that in my personality makeup, and I've done it on more than one occasion. Sometimes you make a small mess and sometimes you make a big one, and I've done both. But if you're lucky, you have a partner in business and or life that believes in you and supports you in your pursuits. If not, they're going to question yet another entrepreneurial journey where you start something but can't seem to make it work. which can cause a lot of stress in your life. It can cause stress in your marriage, in your family, and that's devastating for you because you don't want the people that you love most angry with you. So that's why it's important for you to have accountability and guidance. That way, you stay on task and put your enormous energy into the things that will help you create a real business instead of a really expensive hobby. On a personal level, you love people and you want to always lighten the mood, but some personality types need much longer to process than you do, and they may not want to lighten the mood quite yet. It's difficult for you to give them time and space to process, but when you do, you show them that you respect their needs, and they will be more likely to engage when you do come together to discuss your differences. To make that easier for both of you, choose a time to reconvene. That way you aren't pushing them and they don't avoid the needed conversation. So when you do come back together, you also need to remember that the D person wants to have the shortest conversation possible. If you feel the need to have a deep discussion, it would be helpful to have a list that you can check off as you go through so the D person can see the progress in the conversation. For the S and C person, you can be incredibly overwhelming. So you might want to dial back your enthusiasm and your intensity a little bit so that they don't shut down because they are overwhelmed. This is especially important when you're dealing with your children. If you have children or a partner who stop talking and engaging, you may need to take that step back and reconvene again. It takes practice, but when you can do this, the results can be astounding. So now we're going to turn to the S personality. Your greatest struggle with creating a successful business is all of the obligations you feel to everyone else in your life. You would have a successful business if you didn't have so many other commitments, so many interruptions, so many people who depend on you for other things, right? The thing is that most S women entrepreneurs I know have created those commitments and situations themselves that keep them from success, but they lack the boundaries and assertiveness to back out of them. That's where those task-oriented personalities can help you set boundaries and might even be willing to be the bad guy for you so that you can clear the decks and build the business and the life that will help you help so many more people in the long run. Because you love helping people, but you don't pivot out of personal situations easily, especially difficult ones. You sometimes feel like you're the only person there for some people, but that may be the perfect opportunity and perfect reason to ask yourself why that is, especially if other people are questioning the situation you've gotten yourself into. Find a task-oriented person or two to help you look at your life and your business with a more objective eye. While you provide others with personal support, they can provide you with an objectivity you struggle with. Like the I personality, you love your people, but you'll be able to love them even better when you set up boundaries and give your business and your people the attention they deserve without guilt. It takes courage to do that, but when you do it, you'll feel so much better about every area of your life. I promise. Moving on to the detailed C personality. You're the person that the other personalities need to pay attention to the details, but you need them as much as they need you. While you can create a wonderful business on paper, you can get so caught up in the planning that you forget or you hesitate to act. And that D personality can encourage you to take chances you might not take otherwise. The I personality can remind you that your work can be as much fun as it is profitable. And everyone needs the supportive S to believe in them when they struggle to believe in themselves. The other thing for the C personality to remember is that making a mistake is not the same as failing. Every successful entrepreneur has made mistakes on their way to success. The key to keep your mistakes in perspective is to learn from them to do better as a result of that. When you're courageous enough to get perspective on your mistakes from a trusted associate or a partner with a different personality type, you might walk away with a very different perspective on your feelings of failure. And when we're talking about failing in relationships, it's a bit different. Like the D personality, you need to remember that people have emotions and they don't always fit in a nice box like you would like them to. You can't count on them having the same reaction every time. And that inconsistency is difficult for you. In relationships, as in life, the only constant is change. And that is not the most comfortable place for you. You're not happy with the gray areas of life, and you much prefer your life to be in black and white. But most people live in the gray. The challenge there is that even if you have the same personality type as someone else, you live your life by a set of rules. And even though someone else might do the same thing, their rules might and probably will be different from yours. That doesn't mean that one of you is right and one of you is wrong. It honestly means that what works for you and what works for someone else is different. I know there's that gray again, and that bothers you guys, but it's really true. And when you think about it, I think you'll understand that. You don't have the same rules probably as your own parents, even if you were raised by them. You may understand them, but you probably live a little differently. And I'm sorry about that, but you can live your truth and honor somebody else's without being wrong or being a failure. And yes, I know the idea of multiple right answers is not something you love either, but fortunately or unfortunately, that's pretty much how life goes. And it will help you so much if you can make peace with that. I think it's comforting to know that unless you have some kind of mental health issue, and I understand that those exist, that you're going to feel like a failure at some point in your life. Everyone does. The most important part of that to understand is that failing is not failure. The most successful people in the world have failed multiple times. So have all the successful people you know, whether they talk about it or not. For example, I know a couple who are millionaires. And at one time, I felt like such a failure when I was with them because my entrepreneur journey looked so different from theirs. What I didn't know at the time is that they had failed at more things than I had even tried. And when I found that out, it was like a huge weight was lifted off my shoulders. And now I belong to groups that celebrate failing. We have Fail Forward Friday, where we talk about our failures and how we're failing forward. And then we follow that up with Success Saturday, which is awesome because we celebrate even the little successes in life. And those are all great for the business realm. And when you move into the personal realm, I have some really big advice for you so that you don't make the same mistake of believing that something isn't true that I made. Before you take the advice from a marriage or a family guru, look at their past. I listened to a relationship expert on a show one time, and I just knew his advice didn't fit what I knew about marriage. When I researched this person, he had been married multiple times, had a string of girlfriends, and was really full of himself. And his most recent marriage was to another relationship expert that only lasted a few years. In my opinion, he wasn't a relationship expert. He was an expert at falling in love, not staying for the long haul. Now, he's since had a long-term marriage, so maybe he figured it out, and I'm glad to hear that. But when he was doling out this advice, he, in my opinion, wasn't qualified to give it. The truth is that marriage is a challenge. Even when you're like me and you've been married to your favorite person on the planet for 28 years, it still takes work, but it's worth it. The same goes for parenting. I've always said that parenting is the toughest unpaid job you'll ever have, that you're so glad you did and would do it all over again. All of my children are adults now, and I still parent. although it's much different. I still have one at home who's in college. I have one 3,000 miles away and one an hour and a half away who parents our only grandchild with his wife. Each of these relationships is a blessing, but I guarantee you, I have felt like a failure in each of them at some point. I know now that is the result of not understanding them or them not understanding me. And when we take the time to get past that, life is so very good. And that's what I want for each of you. You know, I've said it many times, and I'm going to keep saying it, that everyone feels like a failure at some point. I felt that way in my business and in my life so many times. But with age, sometimes comes wisdom. And I realize we can learn so much from failing. One of the most important lessons I've learned about failure is to forgive it faster. That's easier for the D and the I personalities and more difficult for the S's and the C's. Regret, though, is so very heavy, and it keeps you from moving on to the next part of your journey. It weighs you down and holds you back more than you can possibly imagine. When you let go of that, it's amazing how quickly you can move forward. So forgive yourself like you would a 3-year-old who doesn't know any better. Because even if you say you knew better, if you truly did know better, you would have done better. And hopefully the next time you will. If you want help with that, be sure to join the K.E. Bemis Consulting email list. I'll put a link in the comments for you to do that. And by doing that, you'll be able to take the first step toward understanding yourself, your business, and everyone around you better. You also get the best discount on a personal DISC assessment and one-on-one appointment with me to discuss your results and your amazing personality that I offer. You'll get access to all of the other tools that make your life and your business so much easier. And most of them, especially when they first come out, at a discounted price, because being on my email list has its privileges. Seriously, when you start learning and applying this information, people will think you're magic because you learn to treat them the way they want to be treated. It's called the Platinum Rule, and I have a podcast talking about that. So check the show notes for that link as well. And until next time, keep creating your best life and your best business using your amazing personality. Love you all. At Moving Toward Better and K.E. Bemis Consulting, it's our mission to help you live your best life, powered by your unique and amazing personality. If you want to make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to the podcast today and head over to kebemis.com to learn more about how amazing your personality is. That's KEBEMMES.com. And if you missed that, check the show notes for the web address. As always, thanks for listening, thanks for being you, and have a great day. Love you all.